What's happening, people? Dom here from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals. Welcome back to the channel. Now, you're like, Dom, you seem a hair less peppy than usual. What happened, buddy? Well, I'll have you know that this is my second time appearing in front of you today. I came in here, got my little camera and lights set up, got my little microphone working, and I realized, oh my God, that lens is on my desk at home. So 1 hour later, one extra dose of Boston traffic that nobody asked for, and I'm back in front of you again for the second time this morning. And you're like, so what is this piece of gear that created all this extra fuss? Well, luckily, it's a really, really exciting lens, totally worth the extra hassle. This is the NIKKOR 58mm f/0.95 S Noct. You heard that right, f/0.95 on this full frame prime designed for mirrorless Nikon bodies. And if you're like, oh, that might be a nice little lens for me to pick up, occasionally pop onto my Nikon body, well, yeah, you're absolutely right. $8,000 later, I think you would be delighted to shoot on Nikon's fastest NIKKOR prime to date. And maybe a bit sore too, to be honest. This thing is far from lightweight, but we're going to chat about that a little bit down the line, because in this week's video I just want to share a couple of things that I think you should know about this absolute beast of a lens. A flagship lens. I honestly didn't even know there were flagship lenses, and we're supposed to be the lens pros. So I suppose by pairing this flagship lens on Nikon's flagship camera body, the Z9, that's like the most legit Nikon setup you could possibly get. So I'm excited. So I'm already behind schedule, and there is a lot to unpack with this thing, so I'm kind of just gonna jump right into it, just talk about whatever jumps out at me about this NIKKOR Noct lens. So allowing for that 0.95 aperture are 11 aperture blades, and honestly, at such an expensive lens, I was expecting something more like a 14 blade aperture, but the bokehs in an image taken from this lens, I've got to say, are still very manageable and shapely. I'm seeing some green and magenta coatings on the elements as I look down the barrel there. Nikon says a lot of the tweaks going into this lens are due to these nano crystal coatings that help fight off internal reflections and ghosting, especially important considering how much light is entering this lens at 0.95. We got a large front element right here that is sort of shielded by this weird sort of screw-on lens hood scenario. It kind of just looks like a little extension of the lens, but I think I quickly realized that that is like less of a lens hood and maybe more of like a protection for how like the internal barrel right here like telescopes out a little bit. And to be honest, when I saw that telescoping action on the focus, I'm like, oh man, there's probably gonna be some focus breathing on this lens as you rack from infinity to close focus, but turns out Nikon paid a lot of attention to that and made some engineering tweaks so that presence of focus breathing is greatly lessened. Each little detail I learn about this lens, I'm like, wow, this thing would be amazing in a cine application. It's practically a cinema lens. But I want to spitball some potential best use cases for this thing a little bit later. Now, taking a break from optics, let's talk about something that you can't see from watching this video: the weight. This Nikon Noct is coming in at almost 4.5 pounds. I was expecting this thing to be heavy, but at almost 4.5 pounds, that's just like bordering on the line of being too cumbersome for use. And then you pair it with Nikon's inexplicably heavy Z9 body, and you now have an aircraft carrier as a camera lens setup. I was hand-holding this setup, just kind of like walking around at night, seeing what I could get. And after an hour or so, I was literally trying to switch hands to see how it was possible for me to take lefty pictures. It is a real strain on your wrist. Another little quirk that adds to like the nicheness of this product. This 0.95 lens, probably not something that's coming out with you on every shoot. And you're like, Dom, well, you paired Nikon's heaviest lens on Nikon's heaviest body. Well, there's something to be said about balance there too. This lens felt front heavy on the Z9. I can only imagine what this would feel like on a Z7 II. It would be all lens. So that combination of things, the 0.95 aperture, the very robust build, that proposes an interesting challenge when you're out shooting with this lens, which I always like. I love a good challenge. But professionally speaking, I don't know if I would want to be challenged in that way just at the prospect of capturing an ultra shallow depth of field shot. And just to speak to the sharpness of this lens, because I kind of just glazed over that, it's stunningly sharp, don't get me wrong, but at 0.95, your chance of getting that stunningly sharp shot with the focus plane where you want it is very, very difficult. As I said, people, I'm already behind schedule. Before I wrap up this video though, I just kind of want to discuss a couple of potential use cases for this lens, because it's absolutely niche and, to be honest, straight up out of reach for a lot of people. This is an $8,000 prime that doesn't autofocus. It weighs as much as a newborn in Timberland boots, and any camera that you pair this up with is either going to be very, very front heavy or just an absolute cinder block of a setup. Well, maybe some of the pictures taken from this lens that you've seen in this video up until this point are possibly beginning to convince you that maybe there is a valid reason to scoop a 0.95 lens. I mean, some of the images are really, really stunning, and I regret not being able to take like a full studio session with a model in makeup and like some wardrobe and background elements to really see what this thing could do, where there's a lot more control. And maybe you could put this thing on a tripod. So I mean, you tell me, what would you use a 0.95 lens for if price was no object? Honestly, the one thing I couldn't stop thinking about with this thing is the 8K ProRes RAW that's going on in these Nikon bodies, the Z9 and the Z8, paired with this guy, full frame 0.95, that is going to be manually focused anyways. I mean, on paper, that is a cinema camera dream setup, and it's coming from Nikon. So with that, everybody, that is gonna do it on this video. And if I was operating off a hunch, I'm gonna go ahead and say that you don't have the extra $8,000 flying around to outright buy the Nikon Noct. Well, if only there was some sort of way that you could temporarily use this lens in some sort of like online camera gear rental scenario, if only something like that existed. Well, anyways, we can keep hoping for that, but for now, if you happen to like this video, hit it with a thumbs up down below. Drop a comment in the comment section below if you want to talk about what you would use a 0.95 lens, or if you want to spitball what you would put in your Nikon cinema rig. But if you didn't do any of that, you could subscribe to the channel. Once you do that, hit that little bell button. That will keep you in the loop whenever we post new content. So people, clean up that cluttered desk, or eventually you'll just start looking right past it. We'll see you in the next one.